Hello. It's been some time since I've done a video like this. Stopped doing it a while back, but I figured since things are going to be becoming more and more complex, and the written handouts can only go so far for displaying things well before they get incredibly complex, even for myself to write. So I figured start again doing video tutorials and see how it goes and see how you take to them. Previously, I've been told that I can be a little monotonous at times, so I kind of talk a little bit like a robot. But I'll try not to do that. Mostly because I leave it so late to do it. But no, not anymore. In this first video, we'll be looking at cat rig. Okay, so that is Max's inbuilt system for creating skeletons to do animations. So you'll better get an idea. You'll get a better idea of that when it as we're going on through it. It's put simply, okay, just like the human body, you wouldn't be able to move if you didn't have your skeleton to support you. And in the 3D world, it's exactly the same. Different programs, Maya, and Blender, and oh god, I can't think now. But they all have their own different systems. 3D Studio Max's actually it has a few, but obviously it's developed over time. FBIK was for Maya, very very popular, very very good. Hence why Maya was used in movies a lot, because it had a more advanced animation system. However, Max has slowly been creeping up and getting better and better and better and better over the years. It started off with a really tedious system for bones, which I taught a few years ago, and God knows why. But then I started moving into biped, which was very good, but still not quite as good as Maya. But now, in the last year, they've really pulled it out the bag, and they've created a new system called CAT, which does actually stand for something. It's not just CAT. It stands for Character Animation Tools. So it's a special system aimed purely towards animation, which is kind of special because it pulls Max back as a real contender. For companies, obviously say contender. Autodesk own both of the big pieces of software, but still. Anyway, I've waffled on enough, so let's actually get on with this, because I don't want these videos to go on too long. So, to start with, okay, we're going to go on to Blackboard, right? And in practical, you will see within the Starter's Bible, I've put a zip file called Zeke. There it is. Okay, and you're going to download that because that's got a little character of mine in it. I'm not using a realistic character for now. The principles are exactly the same, it doesn't matter. But realistic characters are the same process, but just a little bit more complicated. And I want to start with something that's going to be a little bit more straightforward. So if you download that, open it in Max, you'll get this little guy. And some of you may recognise him, some of you might not. Hopefully you do. This was my little redesign for a game that I was a big fan of when I was a kid, called Zombies Ain't My Neighbours, and it was aimed at the iPhone, and it all worked. You could run it around, so it worked out quite well. This is the slightly higher poly version, actually, only slightly. Yeah. It all looks good. Anyway, what we're going to do is by the end of this, it should be about, I don't know, I think it's about 3 or 4 of these before we'll get to a state where we can properly animate it. But in this first video, we'll start adding the skeleton, and I'll introduce you to the basics. So, a pivotal thing, right, something to remember when it comes to your character, but I will remind you, just like the trash, you'll notice that my character's pivot point is right on the bottom of his feet and 0, 0, 0. See? 0, 0, 0, 0. That is really crucial, because otherwise you put it into a game engine and it's going to be flying up here. Alright? doesn't matter if he's on the ground. If the pivot's somewhere down here, it will appear like this in game. So it's really, really important that it's on the ground. I cannot stress that enough, especially when doing animations. So let's get rid of that. Don't need that. Cat rig. First stop is, and this is where I've got to try and remember, we go into create, and then we're going to go across to systems. Alright, so you can see biped by default and bones, all the old systems are there, but we're not going to be using them. This is where I've got to remember. It's in, there it is. So it's in helpers. Okay, we're going to spend a lot of time in here actually later on, but we'll get to that. You go down to cat objects and choose cat parent. Okay, and we're going to pop this right at the base of his feet. Okay, just like that. There we go. Nice and easy. Now, center it off. Make them all 0, so it's absolutely at the center. Then you know it's all in line with your character. And what we're going to do now is go to modify, and you'll see with this selected, it gives you some options. Okay, so it's got add rigging. There is by default a number of different rig settings. These are kind of default versions. So, you know, we could have an alien one if we wanted to. I think it's add rigging. No, it's not that one. Goofball. Oh, you just double click it. There we go. So there we go. That's a default alien apparently. Not that impressed with it. But yeah, so there is loads of options. And obviously, you know, this could make life a lot easier for an animator or someone in the games industry who's forked out pay for the commercial version of this. You know, they could very quickly create a rig. But it's dead important that obviously you guys learn it. So I don't want you cheating and using anything like base human or anything like that. I want you doing this from scratch. Okay, but that is something along the lines of what we'll achieve. So, with the base clicked, you'll see create pelvis. Click that, and a little box will appear right up here. Right, drag that down, and because it's his pelvis, it's his hips. If you don't know what a pelvis is, we're going to scale it, move it, and fit it in roughly. We can always change it later. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so it has to be within the body. That's really important. Right? And it has to be in a sensible position. I think that is a sensible position. Yep, that looks sensible to me. Okay, so select the pelvis and we get even more options. We get add leg, add arm, add spine, add tail, add bone, add rigging. Kind of all speaks for itself. So let's give him a leg. There we go. We have a leg. So you can see it kind of sticks out from him. If I turn it up, you can see it doesn't quite fit right. Also, it's always, the foot's always at an angle like this, and that's fine. It should be at an angle like that. You might have to move it though. I suggest though moving this instead if you're going to move it, and then move that back. Now what's really, really important is that you always, and I mean always, okay, always have a slight bend to everything. And the reason for this is because the way it calculates movement, if I demonstrate, if I go like that, you can see the leg bends, and there's this white line here, that's called an IK, or the process is called inverse kinetics. And what it does is it works out that if I pull this up, the leg is going to bend in a certain place. And as you can see there, it calculates the angle. It also calculates how limbs would react, so the twisting. If you don't put the bends in correctly though, it will do very, very strange things. I think I can demonstrate by doing something like, oh, if I can get it near enough. Yeah, there we go. So I wouldn't, if you had it dead straight, it might go in the opposite direction. You don't want that. So, being a stupid computer, you have to tell it to go in a certain direction by giving it a slight bend, even if your leg doesn't have a bend. However, if you're doing a character, you should always do it in a relaxed pose, so it should always have a slight bend to all the limbs. You'll notice that with all my cats, they all have a slight bend, even the fingers, even the thumb, a slight bend. Yeah. Okay, so that kind of fits very nicely. Sometimes you have to scale them, which is easy enough, as I'll show you. You can just use the standard scale tools. But if you change this to local, pivot to local, you'll see that it angles in the direction of the bone, whichever way it's facing, which makes it easier to scale it like so. If you don't do that, and you do it with view, it can end up skewed and not straight. You don't really want that for bones. They need to be really, 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 really clean and tidy. So just make sure that that's on local, and you're working that for the rest of the time you're working on bones. So it's all inside. And if we want to, down on the foot, we can add a bone. You can see it's created a bone inside. If I can actually select it, there it is. And we can move this down into position as well. So let's pop that down like that. There you go, scale it. And that bone, because I created it from the foot, is automatically connected. See? So it's all linked. Now, in the past, if you made a change in like biped or bones, it was really, really annoying to do the same thing on the other side. And what I love about CatRig is that it makes this process so simple, because much like when you use symmetry or mirror, when you're modelling to save yourself a lot of time, you only have to do half the work. You can do exactly the same process in this, and all you actually have to do is press add leg again, and it realizes that you've created one leg, so it presumes that it's a biped model. I've got to be honest, I don't know what happens if you're doing four legs. I imagine it's the same thing. I imagine it's, it can still work it out. It's a very, very clever system. So maybe I'll have to do a little tutorial on four-legged, creatures at some point. It'd be interesting, actually. So you can see now we've got two legs perfectly aligned, fitting nicely inside. We now work on the spine. So add spine, right? And if you select the base here, you get to choose how many bones you use in your spine. Now, I don't recommend using a lot of bones. Mostly because there is a limitation, just like with tri-counts and stuff. There's also a limitation to the amount of bones you can use in a model. I think, don't quote me on this, because it does vary, but normally anywhere for around about 75 bones is about the norm, which doesn't seem a lot, and it's really not. It's but they do go up. I know, like the likes of Marcus Phoenix was about 120 odd or 40 odd, something around that. As I said, I don't know exactly, but I do know it was in the hundreds. So there's no sort of set limit. It really does depend on how efficient your game is. UDK kind of handles bones quite well. It's quite a high-end engine. Same with Cry engines, so they're quite good. They can take a lot of bones, but you really want to keep it to a minimum. And I will show you ways of doing that. Okay, so let's bring it to, let's say 3. Okay, because you want it really to be wherever it's going to fold over. You want a ridge. This up here is going to be the clavicle. Now, to explain this, if I go in here on my little skeleton blokey here, you can see that the clavicle's up there. Right? I don't know why I'm pointing to it on the screen. Not with my mouse, but my finger, by the way. Force of habit, I suppose. But yeah, with the mouse, the clavicle is up here. And this is where, if we go back to Max, this is where this bone's got to be, because from this we then create the neck and the head. So it might make more sense to you to think, oh, I'm just going to go straight up and make the head from this. It can't work that way, I'd like to point out. So if you move that down, this will be the clavicle. You have to make it so big. In fact, ensure that you scale everything down, everything's sensible. Okay, kind of like to make the spine a little bit wider, like that. Yeah. Okay, all good. Now, that should do it. So you can see they kind of line up with the folds here, and it should cause a nice deformation. And it's important with your character that you put enough edge loops in that you account for that. So you can see, like here, I've put in extra loops so the arms will bend correctly, and here it flows nicely, and I've put in extra loops so the character can bend smoothly. Okay, so let's continue. We've got that. Okay, from here, I would like to point out the spine is not straight. It's not straight. As you can see here, I've got a slight bend to it. It actually is an S shape. So really, it should do this. Something along these lines. It's not going to be entirely brilliant. And if we angle that slightly as well. There we go. So you should see it is an S shape. I think I might have gone a little bit overboard there. But that's kind of near enough. Yeah, there we go. So you see it's got an S-shaped curve to it. And that's really, really important. Yeah, it will help the character have a much more realistic feel. So select the top bone up there. Now, let's create the arms. So much in the same way as the legs, okay, it's going to do the same thing with the arms. So we only actually have to do one arm and get it correct. So I recommend not stopping halfway or anything like that. Go right the way down, do all the fingers as well, if necessary, and then obviously press arm again, because it's annoying to delete it and update it. So you might get it right the first time, and yeah, it'll be a lot easier. So if we create add arm, there we go. For some reason it always creates that side first. Must be coded in. So it does create this, which, if you have a look, is going to be our scapula. And generally, it never really has much effect on my models. I never really use it so much. But it links everything quite nicely. So switch that back to local. As you can see, it got a little bit annoying there. Okay, move it into position. And you can see there's a little bit more work now, but it'll get there. Okay. We can switch that one to local as well. That'll make it nice and easy to move it. Okay. This could do with being scaled, so let's do that. I don't want it sticking out too much. Yeah. Okay. Yep. There we go. Okay, so that seems all right. A little rotation here. Got a snap on. Turn that off. Be a bit more accurate then. There we go. And make sure it all lines up. And it's worth taking the time to make sure you get it right. Yeah, don't sort of half-ass do it. You know, get it right. There we go. Okay. So that kind of seems alright to me. That could be a little bit wider. It is going to stick out slightly, the hand, but that can be forgiven. Alright, so there we go. I'm happy with that. I think I kind of am. Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with that. Fingers. Now, obviously, as I said, you want to keep the amount of bones to as the minimal, and it does depend on what you're building it for. Obviously, if you're just building this as an animation piece for, let's say, film, for instance, then really the sky's the limit. You can put as many bones as you wanted to. For this brief, despite its sort of filmy undertones, I do want to keep it still kind of gamey in terms of the amount of, well, the constraints at least. So if you don't need bones, don't have them. And a good example of where you don't need bones is for every single finger on this. These two fingers always move together. So you could have one bone for both of these. I'm not going to be fussy though in this instance. If you put all four fingers in, that's not going to make the whole thing stop, and your character's not going to work. Of course it will. So I'm going to go against my better judgment here, and I am actually going to do all the fingers. But I'll do it very quickly because I'm conscious of time and I don't want this to go on too long. But to demonstrate it, okay, once again, it's a similar story. You want it to line up with the ridges. So you see how that lines up with that? So that's where the first fold's going to be. Yeah? So we could, in fact, be a bit cheeky and move that there. Yes, that's better. See, it'll make no difference. That'll move with the hand no matter what. And then what we can do is create another little bone right there. Bend it slightly. Make sure it all lines up. Okay, and the final one. There it is. And we'll just scale them so they fit inside rather nicely. There we go. So you can do that for all the fingers. In the quick way to do it, don't bother recreating all of the fingers in the same way. I'm trying to think of my my term now. What have I got? Oh yeah, work smart, not hard. Clone it, hold down Shift, drag, copy, and it will save you some time. Now you have the fingers ready for your next one. I've got to keep moving them back. Not a problem though. Okay, so it's a little bit fiddly, but it does save you a little bit of time. There we go. Move them back into place. Push it out. We look on the side view. Yeah, so rotate that. And I realise it might be looking a bit like a wiring mesh, so let me turn it around that way so you can see it more clearly. Just push that to there, and then push that one back up. Alright. Okay, so I won't do all the fingers right now. That kind of gets the idea. You do the same, repeat the process for those two fingers there, and it would be done. The thumb is a similar situation again, so that's the last one I'll do on this hand. But don't forget, repeat this process another 2 times for these 2 fingers here. As I said, don't want this video to go on too long. So the thumb, same sort of thing. Bring that there. A little bit more fiddly. So make sure you try and match the angle of it. So about there. Add a bone. Rotate it. Scale it. Okay, and the last one, right on the tip, is here. Okay, so there we go. Just a little bit there. There you go. So don't forget, remember to maintain a slight bend to it, even if it's not there, over-exaggerate it slightly. And there we go. So obviously, I've done the other few fingers. Go over, select the clavicle bone, and go add arm. And then it will do its best over here. You can see it doing it now. A little bit laggy, so it showed the process quite nicely there. And you can see that it's worked it out, the mirror. Great. That is that. So the last bit that we're going to show you in this video, well, I mean it's only me here. The last bit I'm going to show you in this video is the head. And to do that, there's obviously no add head tool. We have to use the add spine again. So click that. You're going to get loads of them come up. So remember, just like spine, select the base of it. And we're going to bring that down to, let's see, 2. 2 I think sensible. Maybe not. Maybe even 1. Yeah, 1 seems more sensible. So that the hub, if we scale that, this will be our noggin. Okay. In fact, Zamundo, I will never say that again. Let's actually make it 2. Might give a greater range. Let me have a think. Let me have a think. Let's have a look. I can never decide on this bit. I always get to here and I sort of go, do I, don't I? Because as you can see, if you stretch it like that, it doesn't make any difference. It'll stretch. So yeah, I think I always do put 2 there. 2! And then that there, yeah, that's it. Okay, so I can use that one then to push this one down to there. There we go. That's exactly what I was hoping for. Right. I'm a bit fussy about these things. You'll get used to that, guys. You'll get used to that. And girls, I should point out. Okay, there we go. Right, so we have our head. Right. We have our body. Now, obviously, there's a lot of things like the facial features and stuff like that. I'll go over that. We're not going to put them in using this same method. It's facial bones, a bit different, a little bit more complicated than this. Obviously, this was nice and straightforward, but we'll go into that in another video. Okay, so the next video will be on skinning. So a little demonstration on how to skin your model. And that really is the fun part. But it should be all good. Okay, so ciao for now.